Hi, we're going to keep going here with moving through the intervals. We've covered two really important ones, the half step and the whole step, and that will serve us well when we start studying scales, because most scales are composed of half steps and whole steps. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them are. The chromatic scale and the whole tone scale that we looked at are fairly unique scales, and as I said, they're used but not used as much. They're examples of symmetric scales, but the scales that make up the bread and butter of most of the music we play and hear, the major scale, the harmonic minor scale, scales like that, they're composed primarily of whole steps and half steps. So the next interval I want to look at today, right now, is the third. The third is a critical interval because it starts to imply a chord quality. Thirds tell you basically whether a chord is major or minor, and that means a lot because chords are generally ranked as some kind of a major or some kind of a minor. So let's look at the thirds. Let's start with the major third. If we looked at C, the major third above C would be E. This is two whole steps from C to D to D to E. Or how many half steps? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty simple. Two whole steps or four half steps. The sound of it is like that. Now you are starting to probably hear sounds that start to sound a little bit like chords. On the staying on the same string, it's a bit of a stretch. You can't play it without stretching. Okay. On adjacent strings, the string sets, on all of the string sets except 2 and 3, the major third will look like that. When we come into the second and third, they're parallel or in the same fret. When we come back, all the rest of the string sets, we're going to get that shape. Now I've been playing them harmonically so you can get an idea of what they sound like harmonically. Now the minor third is like its name implies. It's a third, but the third degree has been lowered. So the interval is now a step and a half from C to E flat. Or how many half steps? 1, 2, 3. Step and a half is 3 half steps. On the linearly, when you're on the same string, that's a very comfortable, easy interval to play. Now when you're on adjacent strings, again all except the second and third string sets, then the minor third interval is going to look like this. So if we're over here, when we come into the second and third, they're like this, a minor third. Okay, and this gives us, you can imply chords subtly with the major and minor third. Here's E, its major third. Above it, G sharp if I played an E bass. And I tend to hear that as an E major chord. If I play the G, we have the sound of the minor third. Now they're not totally filled out yet. To technically make a full chord, we need a triad because these could be different things. Now when you play a bass note with it, because the bass note has overtones, it starts to heavily imply the third. But this interval could be used in a lot of ways. It could be used in an A, and it could be used in a D. It could be used a lot of ways. But that's the sound of them. The major third sort of sounds like the whole step a little bit, because it has that little bit of a spacey quality, kind of upbeat, a bit of it. The minor third is generally thought of as being a darker interval. Expresses sadness a lot of times. When we have a major third, we have major chords associated with that. Alegria is in major. The E is played in major. Alegria, just like the name sounds, it's happy, it's upbeat. In the Alegria, there's a spot, part of the dance, that changes to a silencio. In the silencio, the major E changes to minor. And you can really hear that shifting in the tonality now that makes it sound much more mysterious, sort of sad, a little bit melancholy, a little bit dark. And then after the silencio, it will come back into the major, into the upbeat alegria part of it. So the major and minor are just going to be all over the place. This is a very important interval. It's one that leads us now into spotting chord quality, as opposed to whole steps and half steps, which tend to be more little bits and pieces that go into formulating various scales. When we come back next time, we're going to look at the interval of a fifth.